have the presentation about the lionfish by Jason Hall Spencer, a professor of marine biology. It's you. So, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So, this project was run in Cyprus, and it involved two universities, my university and the University of Cyprus. It had a company called Marine Environmental Research, which is based in Limassol. There's the NGO Inalia Physis, which I think you guys are working with already, which is in Nicosia. And then we had the fisheries, the Department of Fisheries involved as well. And they were very, very helpful because they were able to change the law in order for us to be able to catch lionfish using scuba equipment.
Keep it near you.
Okay. Right. So we've produced this guide to lionfish management in the Mediterranean, but unfortunately we've run out of print copies. So I've got a copy on my USB stick in my pocket if anyone wants one, and we're looking for a little bit of funding from somebody in order to print more. Just a bit of money to print maybe 100 more copies of this to spread around the countries of the Mediterranean. So what it is, it's not a scientific publication. It's designed for policymakers and managers. There is science, obviously, behind everything we say in the report, but it's referenced at the end of the report. So we describe how to do lionfish removals, how to develop markets for the products that you make from the lionfish. I can't read that very well. I'll read this one. Research and monitoring and regional cooperation, because, of course, in Cyprus, there are two regions of the Cyprus country, and you need people to talk to each other across that boundary in order to tackle an invasive species like this. Okay, so we were very, very proud and pleased that the Prince of Monaco was able to sign our book, which is fantastic. And I'll just run through, before you go to sleep listening to me, the key recommendations that we had, okay? So number one, target the lionfish quickly. In some places in the Caribbean that's worked, and so they've been able to avoid lionfish attacking their ecosystems. Rapidly develop opportunities for commercial and recreational fisheries. I've seen some lionfish in the markets in Greece, but not much. It needs to be a lot more. And there needs to be a focus on the legal challenges because at the moment, for example, it's illegal to fish using scuba equipment anywhere in the Mediterranean. We got a special scientific permit to do it, but that really needs to change, especially if you want to keep your marine protected areas free of this invasive species. I'm not an economist, but for the people in the audience that are, you clearly need to create supply chains for the products. There's something strange about this fish. It really does, something's happening again. It really does get the public interested because it's such an amazing looking fish. Nobody needs to be persuaded to be interested in it because as soon as you get people in the room looking at these things, they're like, wow, this is amazing. And then when you taste it, it's really, really delicious as well. And the people that get involved with culling the lionfish then become kind of advocates for the environment as well, because they then know a lot more about the fish and the environment as well, so it sort of spreads. That's exactly what happened in Cyprus anyway. What you need to do is set thresholds in terms of what environmental benefits you want to get from culling the lionfish, find out what the social impacts you want to have are, and then you can assess how your activities are working against those targets. It'd be good to monitor at sentinel locations. So, for example, in the Straits of Sicily, that's a gateway that hasn't been penetrated by the lionfish yet. It would be a good idea to be keeping a careful look on there because I think these fish are likely to spread all through the Mediterranean. They need to be immediately put on the lionfish on the agenda legally, and we've been knocking on the door in Brussels saying, look, guys, we really need this fish to be listed as a species of concern, because until that happens, the authorities don't need to do anything about it. Okay, so that's a legal challenge. And the last one there, probably the most important one, which unfortunately is covered up by my ugly mug, is this need for security, biodiversity security in the Suez Canal, because that's where these organisms are coming from. Okay, so that's the key points. You can go to sleep now if you want. So this spread of the lionfish is the fastest ever recorded in the world. It's spreading really, really rapidly, like wildfire, in the Mediterranean Sea. We first saw, my PhD student and I first saw them off Cyprus in 2015, and that coincided with the time at which the Suez Canal was being widened and deepened. I don't know if you remember seeing that big ship, the Evergreen, wedged in the Suez Canal. Well, because ships are getting bigger, they're making the canal wider and deeper, okay, which is letting these fish through. And you can see the timeline here that the fish have spread to Sicily and Tunisia just within a few years. So that's one problem, the Suez Canal, the main problem. The other, oops, gone too fast. The other is this expansion of the Suez Canal. So you can see some facts and figures up there, but they make a lot of money. So £1.2 million is the price of bringing a big ship through the canal. Okay, so
Just a little pause because we can't hear you. So sorry, but it's difficult to handle this way.
it's good. You can read the facts and figures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So, like that says, they're obviously trying to widen and expand the canal and make it quicker and easier for big ships to come through. But of course, by doing that, what's happened is they've removed an area that used to be called the Bitter Lakes. There's feedback on this, I think. The Bitter Lakes are an area that was high salinity in Egypt along the course of the canal that acted as a biosecurity control because fish like lionfish could not get through this high salinity region of the canal. Now that's been removed a few years ago, and it's just like a cut artery with things pumping through on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, coming from the Pacific Ocean through into the Mediterranean and radically changing the ecology of the fisheries of Greece. And of course, this is going to very, very strongly affect the fishermen locally on this island and others. Okay, coupled with the biosecurity breach of the Suez Canal, there's also the fact that the seas around us are warming, and the Mediterranean is warming more quickly than most areas on the planet. So the surface of the ocean here is going to be warmer this year than it's ever been before. Okay? The records were broken last year, and they're going to be broken again this year because of what Natalie was talking about yesterday, the warming of the planet due to CO2. So we expect this fish to spread all the way through into French and Spanish waters, and probably through the Straits of Gibraltar and up the coast of Portugal. So it's a pretty major issue. And this is what they look like now. I showed this film to you, and he said, "Is this the Red Sea?" And I went, "No, this is Cyprus." So this is what it looks like just off Limassol now. It's incredible. So I was diving there only a few years ago. These fish did not exist, and now they're all over the place, hundreds and thousands of them. So what are we trying to do about it? Well, we're organizing these removal teams. Okay, so this is a famous wreck in Cyprus, a really big passenger ship called the Zenobia, and people are really getting enthused and want to be involved in helping this environmental disaster. So what we do is we train and equip the divers with using short spear poles. Long spear poles can be used to catch all sorts of fish, but you noticed, I hope, on the last bit of video that these fish stay still in the daytime. The technical term for them is crepuscular, which means they feed and hunt when it's dim light. So at dawn and at dusk, they're very active, but through the day, they just sit still. Once we catch the fish, we have either barbecues on the beach, which is good fun, or we try to get celebrity chefs involved from the best restaurants in Cyprus to show all the fancy ways in which you can make these fish appealing to look at and to eat. And it did work really well, actually. And so here's a picture of how shallow the lionfish can be. Definitely, if you're swimming and snorkeling, you can definitely get stung. And the sting is about 20 times more powerful than a bee sting. I don't think anybody has ever been killed by lionfish, but I think the sting is incredibly painful. My PhD student dropped a fish on his foot and couldn't really talk for a couple of hours because it's so painful. So if you're bathing in these waters, it's dangerous, and it's not going to be long, I think, until people start cancelling flights if they are getting stung in the waters around here, because they don't want to get, obviously, hurt. Now, there's lots of details in this management report at the back in the appendices. So there's things that list the pros and cons of spearfishing, the pros and cons of commercial fishing with nets, etc. And then there's natural controls. It's the natural controls that I would really like to see happen, whereby you have marine protected areas that protect large fish like grouper and shark, which can then attack the lionfish. That would be the ideal. But in the meantime, commercial fishing and spearfishing is the way forwards. Now, I'm not going to go through the list of things that are there, but for example, with spearfishing, you can only spearfish in small areas. But that's useful if you want to target a marine protected area. You can clean the lionfish out and allow the native fish to thrive. What has not worked? Well, one thing that's very dangerous to do is try to teach predators how to catch these fish. So what people were doing was they were feeding the fish to the sharks, but the sharks are a bit clumsy when they're eating, and they can bite you. And then they also associate divers with food, and so they start to chase the divers around, and that's really quite dangerous. Something else that didn't work is having bounty schemes, so whereby the government or other people invest money in paying people to go out and catch fish. That actually doesn't work. So if this foundation was trying to raise money to get people to go and catch these fish, they'd spend their money quickly, and that would run out, and people would be like, well, hey, why can't we carry on getting paid to do this? Actually, though, it's really good fun. Well, I find it fun anyway, to catch these lionfish, and lots of members of the public do enjoy doing it. Men, women, old people, young people alike. So, what is needed is regular culling. You need to monitor the places. There's no point in organising an event if there's not many lionfish in the water, because people get all excited and then they can't catch any. So that doesn't work. You need to wait until there's sufficient numbers to organise a big derby or jamboree or event that people can enjoy. And this has worked in some islands in the Caribbean where there's also a lionfish invasion underway. Other things that have worked, the development of commercial fisheries. Now Belize is exporting lionfish to the USA, which is good for the economy of Belize, and it could be good for the economy of this island as well. There's a lady that makes her entire living out of hunting lionfish. She's the only one who does. This camaraderie aspect is an added benefit of these derbies, because people get to know each other. They share a passion for the environment. They share a passion for the sea. And so they become advocates for ocean protection, which is fantastic. Okay, so this is an event that we ran. We ran loads of these events all over the island of Cyprus. And it built this social capital that I'm talking about, whereby the divers are organised and trained. Obviously, you don't want them shooting the wrong fish, for example. Luckily, though, lionfish are so distinctive, you're unlikely to fish anything else. We didn't have any problems with people breaking the rules and collecting the wrong types of fish. All sorts of added benefits of these derbies are education, conservation awareness, tasting events, new collaborations, increased tourist spending. This is all, we found by surveying people like divers, would you be willing to pay to go on these events? And they are. They want to get involved. So this is a money-making opportunity. You can't read this, I'm afraid. It's a bit too small, the screen. But basically, what we've done is go through the steps needed to set up these scuba diving events. Of the big figures there's been a 400% increase in lionfish around the waters of Cyprus in the last 3 years, and a 64% decrease in numbers where the lionfish have been hunted by divers. Okay. Now the graph, I'm so sorry, the graph doesn't really, it's been a bit cut off, but basically what we're saying is, in areas that are fished, lionfish numbers have gone up. In areas that are fishing and culling, lionfish numbers have gone down. And where there's protected areas, and this is a bit ironic because I'm very pro-protection, in the protected areas where there's no fishing allowed, the lionfish have gone up enormously. So this concept of marine protected areas needs to be handled quite carefully in the Levant part of the Mediterranean, because you don't want them to be hotspots of breeding of invasive species, which is what they are at the present day. Have we done that already? Yes, sorry. Okay, so back to the culling events. What we've done is assess the biology of these fish, and there's various things that make them superb invasive species. One aspect is that they mature quickly, like within 2 years they're mature. They have huge numbers of eggs, by that I mean millions of eggs, and those eggs travel in the plankton, so can spread from island to island around the region here. They are venomous, not poisonous. That's an important distinction. So they're like snakes. They've got a venom that's very, very powerful and cause a great deal of pain, but they're not toxic. You can eat them with no problem at all, and that's something that needs to be communicated to the public clearly, because lots of people think, we can't eat it, it'll be poisonous, but it's not poisonous at all, it's delicious. Okay. And they've got this jaw that can swing open and engulf, they suck in quite big fish, actually, surprisingly big fish. So it looks like it's got a small mouth, but it's actually hinge loaded and opens really wide and can suck in all sorts of different types of prey. So here's a list of the types of fish we found in the stomachs of the ones we collected. And there's a whole range here, but the important point is those are the types of fish that are important for commercially important fish in the region as well. So if these animals are hoovering up all of this bait fish for the ones we want to eat, that's not good at all, right? How big is the fish? The biggest one I've seen is about this big, okay? Yeah. So it's not an enormous fish, but it does have an enormous mouth. And it's not fussy. It will eat any other fish and crustaceans and all sorts of things, right? Not picky. The average size, I would say, is this. Yeah. Biggest ones are like this. Obviously, I won a prize. I won a prize for shooting the smallest one. It was like this. Yeah, it was funny. Because when you have these derbies, the sort of the macho divers, they want to collect the biggest one they can.
And they can eat 6 times their weight.
Yeah.
6 times their weight.
Yeah, they can really fill their bellies up huge. So in the process of developing these markets, actually the chefs and so on, once they know how to handle the fish, as you saw if you were here earlier in the week, can create really delicious dinners with them, and that has allowed us to raise the price of these fish in Cyprus. So here's some nice pictures. Obviously, this is what needs to be done regionally. I do have this IC report, by the way. So there's a lady here from IC, and they've got this Pick the Alien program going on. So please do take a look at this, because it's completely relevant to the region. Okay, so there we've got a price in a restaurant of 40 euros per kilogram for this fish. It's just as good as most of the other fish in terms of the price you can get, because it tastes great. Okay, and the fishermen are collecting them by accident at the moment. I talked to some fishermen this week, and they catch them by accident. They don't like them, and they just throw them away in this region, okay? So clearly that needs to be fixed as well. What's the point in killing these animals and throwing them away? You might as well make money. And so that's where markets need to be developed locally, and I think this island could be a leader for the nation in developing this fishery. One other thing we're trying to do is create traps for these fish, because scuba divers can only go down to about, I tend to only go down to 30 meters these days. You can go deeper, of course, but it gets more dangerous and you get less time. So to collect these fish, which can live down to 120 meters deep, we're thinking about this trap mechanism. Now, the way the trap works is a bit strange, because unlike a lobster pot or other types of traps that you have to attract the animals using bait, this one you only need a fence. So there's a white fence in the middle of the trap, and the fish are attracted to structure. So if this was underwater, this lectern, the fish during the day would come up next to it, okay? And point their spines out back towards you in order to protect themselves. And they don't run away, they don't move. Even if you shoot one next to it, it will stay still. So they like structure. And the idea with this trap is you then close the trap and pull it up. Now, we've tested this trap in Cyprus and caught 0 fish. But the IC program has tested this trap in Greece, and they caught 2 fish. So that's 200% better than us. But I think this is probably the way forwards. When the fishermen learn how to put it and where to put it, they know more than us, obviously. I think this would be a way to remove these fish from deeper waters. Okay, now, we've been banging on the door in Brussels saying, look, we need to put this on the union list, it's called, of species that need to be considered highly invasive, given the fact they just hoover up all the other fish that the fishermen want to catch. But they're resisting. They really are resisting doing it. And the reason they're resisting it is because if it goes on this list, that will have consequences for all of the nations in the European Union that have got a Mediterranean seaboard, because then they have to do something about it. At the moment, as far as I know, Greece is doing nothing about this problem, right? Despite the fact it's clearly and obviously really ecologically damaging and important, and is going to put lots of fishermen out of work unless it's dealt with properly. Okay, so this is the situation in the region. Can you read that? Yeah? So Greece, Turkey and Tunisia, they don't allow scuba diving and they don't allow culling yet. Turkey has officially permitted 2 of these derbies, these events so far. Lebanon doesn't legally endorse it, but is turning a blind eye. There's been special permits provided in Israel to one dive centre and to work inside marine protected areas to remove the fish from their protected areas. Special permits have been given out in Egypt to 70 scuba divers who are trained in how to use this equipment. We had special permits for Cyprus, but that's now ended, unfortunately. And it's permitted in Libya and Palestine. Okay, so this is the Pick the Alien project that's going on in Greece, and I promised the people involved with this NGO that I'd mention it, because it's working quite well, not just for lionfish, but other alien species as well. I'll promote it here. Do you want to take a picture? Ta-da! Good. And it's got lionfish on the cover, which I'm pleased about. And so these are the restaurants and events that have been organised all around from the region. Obviously, they've got big points on the map, but they're obviously one restaurant at a time. So that really it should be like that for just this island. All the restaurants should know about it. The chefs should be trained. That's the way to get these numbers of these fish down. And these are the people involved with sponsoring and helping academically with the Pick the Alien project. And you see Plymouth, myself, is involved with that, but there's lots of other organisations as well. It might be that this Elaphorisos should be involved with this project too. Okay, and I can't read Greek, but you can. These are the restaurants listed that have been involved so far. So if you know of people who run restaurants or run hotels or anything like that, try to mention this to them, because we need to start to develop a hunger amongst the public for eating these fish. Okay, so I'm coming towards the end of this presentation now, but I want to mention this poster as well, because we've got it translated into lots of the Mediterranean languages, like Arabic and French and Spanish, and I think we've got it in... I don't think we've got it for Greek, so we need a translation for Greek. But this is available. I've got this on the pen drive in my pocket as well. So what I'm asking you to do, if you don't mind, is...
Who will translate the Greek?
Huh?
That
Zana said she would do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And she works for the environmental agencies or something. So what I'd like you to do, please, is to take copies of this report and the poster and promulgate it around Greece, because that's essential. And if there's people that you know I should be talking to in Greece to get this on the agenda, please do let me know. There's my email. So could you please, hello, could you please start the video that's in Greek? Thank you very much. While he does that, you can see here there's the do's and don'ts. So these are don't feed them to sharks, don't rely on bounties, but there's all of these other things that are good that should be done.
Τρόπος αλίευσης του λεοντόψαρου, αφαίρεσης από τη θάλασσα και πρώτες βοήθειες. Το λεοντόψαρο είναι ένα ινδοειρηνικής προέλευσης χωροκατακτητικό είδος ψαριού, το οποίο εισέβαλε στα κυπριακά ύδατα σε διάφορα βάθη και συνεχίζει να εξαπλώνεται και σε πολλές άλλες περιοχές της Μεσογείου. Επηρεάζει αρνητικά το θαλάσσιο οικοσύστημα, στο οποίο εισβάλλει και κατ' επέκταση και την κοινωνία και η οικονομία της περιοχής. Παρόλα αυτά, το λεοντόψαρο μπορεί να καταναλωθεί. Είναι πολύ νόστιμο, ενώ με τα μαλακά πτερίγια του μπορούν να δημιουργηθούν πανέμορφα έργα τέχνης. Το έργο Rely on Mend Life έχει σκοπό μεταξύ άλλων να αναπτύξει τρόπους και εργαλεία για μείωση των πληθυσμών του λεοντόψαρου στη Μεσόγειο μέσω έγκαιρης απόκρισης και στοχευμένης αφαίρεσής τους από θαλάσσιες περιοχές και να προωθήσει τις χρήσεις του λεοντόψαρου στην τοπική αγορά, έτσι ώστε οι αφαιρέσεις λεοντόψαρων να είναι οικονομικά βιώσιμες στο μέλλον. Για να καταστούν ασφαλείς οι αφαιρέσεις λεοντόψαρων με κατάδυση, έχει ετοιμαστεί κατάλληλος εξοπλισμός, ο οποίος περιλαμβάνει λαστιχοβόλο όπλο τύπου Hawaiian Slingshot, αποθηκευτικό δοχείο και ειδικά γάντια. Το δοχείο χρησιμοποιείται για να τοποθετούνται τα λεοντόψαρα υποβρυχίως, χωρίς να χρειάζεται ο δίτης να έρθει σε επαφή με το ψάρι. Τα ειδικά γάντια χρησιμοποιούνται κυρίως έξω από το νερό, κατά το χειρισμό του ψαριού, για την αφαίρεση των σκληρών ακανθών του. Είναι σημαντικό όταν καταδύεστε για να αφαιρέσετε λεοντόψαρα να τηρείτε όλους τους κανόνες για ασφαλή κατάδυση. Επίσης, πρέπει να προσέχετε κυρίως όταν είστε κοντά σε βράχους, σε σπήλαια, σε σκοτεινά σημεία και πάνω από θαλάσσια γρασίδια, αφού τα λεοντόψαρα συνήθως προτιμούν να κρύβονται ή να μένουν ακίνητα και ανάποδα μέσα στα σπήλαια. Δεν επιτίθενται, αλλά φέρουν σκληρά δηλητηριώδη αγκάθια για άμυνα και δεν φοβούνται το δίτη, αυξάνοντας την πιθανότητα τυχαίου τσιμπήματος. Κατά την αφαίρεση λεοντόψαρων, ο δίτης μπορεί να κρατά στον ώμο το αποθηκευτικό δοχείο, να το δώσει στο σύντροφο κατάδυσης για βοήθεια ή να το τοποθετήσει στο βυθό κοντά σε χώρο όπου τα λεοντόψαρα είναι συγκεντρωμένα. Το λαστιχοβόλο όπλο χρησιμοποιείται για τη συλλογή των λεοντόψαρων. Κρατήστε το λαστιχοβόλο όπλο με προσοχή και σύνεση. Με τη βοήθεια και των δύο χεριών σας, τεντώστε το λάστιχο που βρίσκεται στην πίσω άκρη του όπλου μέχρι περίπου να φτάσει στην κορυφή και κρατήστε μαζί το λάστιχο και τη ράβδο στο συγκεκριμένο σημείο με το ένα χέρι. Στοχεύστε το λεοντόψαρο και πλησιάστε το με την άκρη του όπλου σε απόσταση γύρω στα 10 εκατοστά, αφού εκείνο δεν μετακινείται πολύ. Ελευθερώστε τη ράβδο από το χέρι σας για να χτυπήσει το ψάρι. Είναι προτιμότερο να σκοτώσετε ή να κινητοποιήσετε το ψάρι με μια κέρια βολή στο κεφάλι ή στο σπόνδυλο. Με αυτόν τον τρόπο, το ψάρι πεθαίνει ακαριέα χωρίς να ταλαιπωρείται και ταυτόχρονα μειώνονται και οι πιθανότητες τυχαίου τσιμπήματος λόγω κίνησης του ψαριού αφού χτυπηθεί. Εάν αστοχίσετε, προσπαθήστε ξανά, αφού το ψάρι ίσως να μετακινηθεί μόνο μερικά εκατοστά από εκεί που βρισκόταν νωρίτερα. Αφού χτυπήσετε το λεοντόψαρο, μεταφέρετε το μέσα στο δοχείο, πιέζοντάς το να περάσει μέσα από τη μικρή είσοδο, η οποία ανοίγει ελάχιστα προς τα μέσα για να μπει το ψάρι στο δοχείο. Αν το λεοντόψαρο είναι αρκετά μεγάλο, βάλτε το στο δοχείο με το κεφάλι πρώτα. Τραβώντας το λαστιχοβόλο όπλο να βγει από το δοχείο, το ψάρι θα μείνει μέσα στο δοχείο, ενώ το όπλο θα είναι έτοιμο για την επόμενη βολή. Αφού βγείτε από το νερό, φορώντας τα ειδικά γάντια, αναποδογυρίστε το δοχείο και ανοίξτε το για να βγάλετε τα ψάρια από μέσα. Αποφύγετε τη μεταχείριση των ψαριών με γυμνά χέρια όταν αυτά είναι ζωντανά. Επίσης, τα λεοντόψαρα μπορεί να μην κινούνται, αλλά είναι πολύ πιθανό κάποια να είναι ακόμα ζωντανά και να σπαρταρίσουν. Για το λόγο αυτό, σιγουρευτείτε ότι τα ψάρια είναι νεκρά πριν τα πιάσετε με γυμνά χέρια και χειριστείτε το ψάρι από το κεφάλι. Σε περίπτωση που τσιμπηθείτε κάτω από το νερό, ακυρώστε την κατάδυση και αναδυθείτε τηρώντας όλους τους κανόνες ασφαλείας. Οι περισσότεροι δίτες αναφέρουν ότι ο πόνος δεν έρχεται αμέσως και ότι το δηλητήριο χρειάζεται αρκετά λεπτά για να αρχίσει να λειτουργεί. Μην πανικοβληθείτε. Με την πρώτη ευκαιρία, εφαρμόστε θερμότητα για να βοηθήσετε τη διάσπαση του πρωτεϊνούχου δηλητηρίου. Χρησιμοποιήστε όση περισσότερη θερμότητα μπορείτε να ανεχτείτε χωρίς να καείτε. Συνιστάτε να κρατήσετε το σημείο του σώματος που τσιμπήθηκε σε ζεστό νερό σε θερμοκρασία γύρω στους 45 με 50 βαθμούς Κελσίου για περίπου 30 έως 90 λεπτά. Για άμεση αγωγή μπορείτε να έχετε μαζί σας θερμοκίστη και να τη χρησιμοποιήσετε υποβρυχίως μέχρι να αναδυθείτε, οπότε και θα πρέπει να συνεχίσετε τις πρώτες βοήθειες έξω από το νερό. Το σημείο που τσιμπήθηκε μπορεί να φουσκώσει ή και να αλλάξει χρώμα. Το κρύο δεν ωφελεί. Το τσίμπημα μπορεί να είναι σοβαρό εάν υπάρξει αλλεργική αντίδραση ή εάν προκληθεί αναφυλακτικό σοκ. Συνήθως το τσίμπημα απλώς προκαλεί πόνο, ο οποίος είναι έντονος τις πρώτες ώρες και εξασθενεί με την πάροδο του χρόνου. Για κάθε ενδεχόμενο, σε περίπτωση τσιμπήματος, αναζητήστε ιατρική περίθαλψη, ειδικά στην περίπτωση συμπτωμάτων αλλεργικής αντίδρασης. Ο ορθός τρόπος αφαίρεσης των ακανθών από το ψάρι, όταν αυτό αλλιευθεί, γίνεται με τη χρήση των ειδικών γαντιών. Κρατώντας το ψάρι από το στόμα, κόβεται με δυνατό ψαλίδι τις σκληρές άκανθες, αρχίζοντας από τη μεγαλύτερη άκανθα που βρίσκεται μπροστά στο κεφάλι, στη ράχη του ψαριού, στο ραχιαίο πτερίγιο και συνεχίζεται προς την ουρά. Αφαιρέστε επίσης τα πτερίγια που βρίσκονται στην κοιλιά και την έβρα του ψαριού. Αφού το αφαιρεθούν όλα τα πτερίγια, μπορείτε να χρησιμοποιήσετε το ψάρι με ασφάλεια. Μπορείτε να κρατήσετε τα μη δηλητηριώδη πτερίγια, τα οποία βρίσκονται στο πλάι και την ουρά του λεοντόψαρου για τη διακόσμηση του πιάτου σας ή για να τα χρησιμοποιήσετε για κατασκευή κοσμημάτων και έργων τέχνης. Μειώστε τους πληθυσμούς των λεοντόψαρων. Βοηθήστε την τοπική αγορά, δίνοντάς της νέα πηγή εισοδήματος μέσω των λεοντόψαρων. Για περισσότερες πληροφορίες, επισκεφτείτε την ιστοσελίδα www.relionmed.eu.
Is on this stick if anyone wants to get a copy of that as well. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Hope you learn more about lionfish. So, any questions? Was it clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Good, good.
What is the solution? Natural.
The natural solution. Well, there isn't a natural solution to the Suez Canal, which is the main problem. What's needed is the desalination brine from making fresh water needs to go into a section of the canal to prevent the transfer of species. That's what happens in the Panama Canal, if you think about it. There's an area that's got, in that case, low salinity. That stops the movement. So there needs to be a reinstigation of a high salinity area in the canal. But the natural solution to the lionfish, now they're here, because you can't exterminate them, is to encourage the protection of big predators. So when my father was first diving in the south of France, in the caves, you could see really big groupers. He was frightened once, because it swam past him, gave him a shock, right? I've dived in the caves in the south of France, I never see these huge groupers now. They've gone. But they need to come back, because they're the types of fish that can tackle the lionfish. So what's needed is some protection of the natural stocks of big animals in the Mediterranean. That's the solution. Okay.
Professor, have you ever had any, or you found any attacks or rejection of biology from some animalistic groups or movements?
Do you mean, have they been attacked by other predators?
No, I mean groups, animalistic groups or...
Oh, I see. You mean animal rights type
Yes.
people
Yes.
who might be offended by this? No, we haven't had any resistance at all,
Okay.
which is interesting actually, because they are beautiful animals, and nobody really likes to see animals suffer, right?
Exactly.
But despite their beauty, they are very, very voracious predators that will wipe out fisheries unless they're tackled. Okay, so I think fishermen, at least, will be very, very keen to reduce the populations around these islands. And I imagine the tourist industry would be able to make money if they said, we keep our beach free of lionfish. You can swim here safely. Please come on holiday here because we remove the lionfish.
I'm asking because maybe it sounds like a little strong to call people to kill one animal. But, I mean, me and I guess now all of us understand that it's better to catch and kill this animal than let it keep growing into the sea.
Yeah.
But when it sounds maybe for a person who is not informed about this and it maybe sound a little strong, like let's go and kill the fish, but we all know now that's the best solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, obviously some people will be morally against killing these fish, but personally I think it's the best thing to do. Yeah, and create a market so that there's an incentive for people to go out and catch them.
Right, and I was going to ask if commercial fishing of lionfish is incented in any way.
Sorry?
Is the commercial fishing of lionfish incented in any way?
Incentivized, okay.
Incentivized, sorry.
Not yet. I was talking to the Food and Agriculture Organization only last week, you know, the one in Rome, where their job is to make sure people don't go hungry. They want to develop sustainable fisheries for this lionfish, and they're writing a report now to say how to do it, because there is already a sustainable fishery for the blue crab that's in the Mediterranean now. It's in Tunisia, it's in Cyprus, so people are catching it to eat. The only tricky thing about this, though, is that once the fishery is developed, then people might say, well, we want to encourage the lionfish more because we make a living from it. So it's tricky. It's tricky. What you really want is to fish them unsustainably, so you lower the population. Yeah. Yeah.
In Cyprus, they promote swordfish to eat it. We only have a lot of swordfish in Cyprus. I don't know much about lionfish, though. So they need to do maybe an awareness campaign to let the public there, even the locals, to start eating these lionfish.
Yeah, I think I thought we did a good job with Liomed, but clearly not everybody in Cyprus knows this problem.
No, that's good.
Yeah. No.
I'll go back and eat the lionfish.
Good. Okay, am I off the hook?
Yes, very good.
Thank you.